Australia's most feared cricket fortress is about to be demolished. For 32 years, no visiting cricket team could defeat Australia here. The Gabba in Brisbane was cricket's ultimate fortress, a place where dreams died and legends were broken. Teams called it the Gabbatoir because careers went there to be slaughtered. Then in January 2021, everything changed. India did the impossible, and Australia's invincible fortress crumbled forever. What you're about to discover isn't just about one cricket match. This is the story of how a legendary venue lost its soul, how decades of dominance ended in heartbreak, and how the most feared ground in cricket became a symbol of decline. The collapse didn't happen overnight, and the secrets behind its fall reveal shocking truths about Australian cricket's darkest chapter. Before the first cricket ball was ever bowled, this land held a much deeper significance. The area was called 1 Mile Swamp by European settlers, but for Aboriginal people across the region, it was sacred ground, a place for settling disputes, holding ceremonies, and conducting trade. Contests similar to modern sports happened here centuries before any stadium existed. In 1889, those vital water holes were drained to make way for European development. The Indigenous history was erased, buried under what would become one of cricket's most famous venues. Recent Olympic redevelopment protests have brought this stolen land issue back to the surface, revealing tensions that run much deeper than sport. The Gabba officially opened as a cricket ground in 1895, but not for the reasons most people think. The Queensland Cricket Association was furious about bigger clubs monopolizing available grounds, leaving smaller teams with nowhere to play. They created electorate cricket, organizing clubs by where players lived to encourage local rivalries. The Gabba was their solution to a grassroots problem, making cricket accessible to ordinary fans. The early Gabba was nothing like today's specialized venue. It hosted rugby league, rugby union, soccer, athletics, cycling, horse racing, and greyhound racing. A dog track circled the playing field until 1993, making the ground far too small for AFL. This wasn't a purpose-built cricket fortress, it was a chaotic multi-sport arena that somehow became legendary. The first recorded match was bizarre even by today's standards. Parliament versus the Press in December 1896. The venue shared first-class cricket with the Brisbane Exhibition Ground until 1931, when it hosted its first test match between Australia and South Africa. The Gabba's journey to international status was gradual, accidental, and completely unplanned. By the 1970s, the Gabba had developed its fearsome reputation through a perfect storm of conditions. The pitch was genuinely terrifying, fast, bouncy, with unpredictable movement that could end careers. Dennis Lilly and Jeff Thompson made their names here, bowling so fast that crowds chanted, "If Lilly doesn't get you, Tomo must." Australia's record spoke for itself. 62.68% of test matches won, only 10 losses in 93 years. This wasn't just home advantage, it was psychological warfare conducted through architecture, climate, and crowd intimidation. What fans didn't know was that the Gabba's golden era was built on shaky foundations, literally. Even during its most successful period, the venue suffered from poor planning and infrastructure neglect. The charming, ramshackle design that created such atmosphere was actually a symptom of deeper problems. Stadium capacity grew organically to around 42,000 after major renovations, but the site's physical limitations meant it could never truly compete with modern venues. The removal of the Greyhound track in 1993 allowed for expansion, but also marked the beginning of the venue's sanitization. Corporate demands for modern stadium standards directly conflicted with the raw, rebellious culture that made the Gabba special. The 1960 Tide Test between Australia and the West Indies remains one of cricket's greatest moments. The first ever test to end in a tie, decided by Joe Solomon's direct hit on the final ball. Frank Worrell's West Indies brought calypso passion and friendly cricket that contrasted beautifully with Australian aggression, creating a template for dramatic Gabba encounters. Behind the scenes, serious problems were mounting. A $128 million renovation project from 1993 to 2005 modernized facilities but destroyed the venue's soul. The Hill C, where generations of fans had created the Gabba's unique atmosphere, was completely eliminated. Corporate boxes replaced genuine passion, turning a working-class sporting cathedral into a sanitized entertainment venue. Technical failures became embarrassingly common. Power outages, electrical fires, and infrastructure breakdowns plagued major events. Utility trucks became a permanent fixture outside the stadium, ready to repair the next system failure. These weren't isolated incidents. They were symptoms of a venue pushed far beyond its original design limits. The pitch itself became inconsistent. Head groundsman David Sendersky tried maintaining traditional Gabba wicket characteristics, fast and bouncy, but external factors kept interfering. The 2022 test against South Africa finished in less than 2 days, on a pitch the ICC rated below average, earning a rare penalty point. The reliable weapon Australia had counted on for decades was becoming unpredictable. Modern Gabba visitors describe a venue that's old and worn out, with uncomfortable seats and tired facilities. Food options are criticized as substandard and overpriced hotbox garbage. Premium veranda seats jumped from $90 to $160 without including including refreshments, price gouging that alienated loyal supporters. The eastern stands became notorious for brutal sun exposure during afternoon matches, making games genuinely uncomfortable for fans. Getting to the Gabba has historically been a nightmare. Poor public transport connections forced fans to endure long walks or unreliable bus services. A cross-river rail station is being built directly under the ground but won't be completed until around 2032, just as the stadium is scheduled for demolition. This represents the ultimate failure of long-term planning. Let's talk about some nerdy facts. So, the Gabba is the first Australian venue to host an international T20 match. Colin Milburn once scored 181 runs in just 2 hours during a 1968 Sheffield Shield match, a feat of sustained aggression that modern cricket rarely sees. Murali Vijay was so focused during his 2014 century that he didn't realize he'd reached the milestone, having been dismissed for 99 in the previous match. The venue added a pool deck for modern entertainment. Up to 140 people can watch matches from an actual swimming pool near the pitch. On January 19, 2021, India's cricket team was broken, battered, and missing their best players through injury. They faced a target of 329 runs on the final day at the Gabba, something no team had ever achieved there. Australia needed just one more push to maintain their 32-year unbeaten streak. What happened next destroyed everything cricket fans thought they knew about the Gabba's power. Rishabh Pant walked to the crease with India still needing 161 runs. Instead of the cautious defensive batting that the Gabba usually demanded, Pant played like he was in a backyard with friends. He hit sixes over the heads of stunned Australian fielders. Shubman Gill anchored the other end with mature stroke play that belonged to a veteran, not a young player experiencing the Gabba for the first time. The crowd watched in stunned silence as India's depleted team chased down the impossible target. When the winning runs came, 32 years of Australian invincibility died with them. Coach Ravi Shastri called it the icing on the cake of his coaching career, but for Australian cricket fans, it felt like the end of everything they believed about their home ground advantage. If India's victory was shocking, what happened in January 2024 was almost cruel. The West Indies arrived with low expectations, their bowling attack led by unknowns including Shamar Joseph, who was playing with a toe injury that should have limited his effectiveness. Australia needed just 216 runs to win, a target that should have been routine at their fortress. Instead, Shamar Joseph produced one of the most stunning bowling performances in Gabba history, taking 7 wickets for 68 runs and dismissing Australia for just 207. The hosts fell 8 runs short of what should have been an easy victory. The psychological advantage that took nearly a century to build had evaporated. While the team was losing matches, politicians were preparing the venue's funeral. Initial plans for a $2.7 billion Olympic rebuild caused massive public outcry, forcing the cancellation of the project in March 2024. A new $3.8 billion, 63,000-seat stadium at Victoria Park was announced instead, with the Gabba scheduled for demolition after the 2032 Olympics. Cricket Australia and Queensland Cricket immediately supported the new venue, prioritizing certainty about venues and scheduling over emotional attachment to history. Their pragmatic response revealed uncomfortable truths. The Gabba had become more liability than asset. Over $1 billion would be needed just to bring it up to basic standards, without any guarantee of improved functionality. The story of the Gabba's fall teaches us that nothing in sport is permanent. Dynasties end, fortresses crumble, and legends become footnotes in history books. For 32 years, the venue seemed unbeatable, but cricket moved forward whether the ground could keep up or not. What makes this story fascinating isn't just the dramatic defeats, but what they reveal about modern sports' relationship with tradition. In an era of global connectivity and professional analysis, home ground mystique cannot survive contact with determined opponents who refuse to be intimidated by history, architecture, or crowd intimidation. The Gabba will host its final matches before demolition, potentially including cricket's return to the Olympics in 2032. A poetic ending for a venue that began with humble community goals and achieved international significance through accident rather than design. When those final matches end, the Gabba won't be remembered as the fortress that fell, but as the venue that taught cricket its most important lesson. No ground, no matter how legendary, is truly unbeatable when faced with skill, preparation, and absolute fearlessness. If this deep dive into sporting mythology meeting harsh reality fascinated you, then check out my video on the Oval Stadium. Subscribe for more investigations into cricket's greatest venues and most dramatic downfalls. What other sporting fortresses do you think are vulnerable to modern challenges? Share your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.